Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. If you've been watching the auto industry lately, you already know that the way buyers want to communicate has fundamentally changed. Today, we're going to break down exactly how the absolute best dealerships are adapting their processes. They aren't just throwing out structure entirely. Instead, they're replacing rigid scripts with dynamic, natural frameworks. Here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at the robotic sales trap, why we need frameworks over rigid scripts, how to handle objections naturally, powering follow-ups with AI, and finally, the mystery shop test. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the robotic sales trap.
So let's look at a massive problem in dealership communication today. It's actually kind of ironic. Think about it. Every single day, we're checking those little boxes on websites to prove to the internet that we aren't bots, right? But then, we turn around and force our BDC and sales teams to use these incredibly rigid, memorized scripts. We literally hand them a piece of paper and say, read this word for word. And the result? Well, they end up sounding exactly like the bots we're all trying to prove we aren't. Customers pick up on this instantly. They can tell within seconds when someone is just running through a checklist instead of having a real, human conversation.
And the second that happens, boom, customers put their emotional defenses right up. They hear those classic generic lines from the traditional car salesman playbook, and it just creates tension instead of trust. You know the ones. What's it going to take to earn your business today? Or, are you ready to buy right now? Those lines are so overused, they just trigger an automatic, guarded response. The pacing feels totally forced, the language sounds rehearsed, and the whole interaction just becomes painfully transactional.
Moving right along to Section 2, frameworks over rigid scripts.
So, how do we fix this? We have to shift away from scripts and start using flexible frameworks. The big takeaway here is that a modern script shouldn't dictate every single word of the conversation. Instead, it should guide it naturally to lower the customer's defensiveness. We still absolutely need structure. In fact, structure is crucial, but it has to be a structure that allows for humanity. Think of a framework more like a roadmap, rather than a set of train tracks that you can't deviate from. The very best salespeople still used repeatable conversation patterns, sure, but they adapt them on the fly based on the customer's personality and their emotional tone. The goal isn't to force a predetermined response, it's to keep the conversation flowing smoothly while making sure the buyer feels comfortable.
Let's look at a quick comparison that really drives this home. A weak script asks, "Are you buying today?" Yikes, right? That immediately creates pressure. It demands a commitment before you've established any value whatsoever. But a better framework simply asks, "So, what brought you out looking today?" See the difference? By swapping out that high-pressure closing language for a relaxed, open-ended discovery question, you instantly build rapport. It feels like a genuine conversation, but it still moves the interaction forward and gives you incredibly valuable info about their motivations.
Here's another really great example of this shift in action. If you jump right in with, what payment are you trying to stay under? You're getting way too transactional, way too fast. Instead, try asking, what's frustrating you about your current vehicle? By doing this, you're establishing an emotional context well before you ever touch the pricing discussion. You're uncovering the real reason they want to buy. If they tell you their current car is just too small for their growing family, or maybe it's constantly breaking down, well, now you've got a real human problem to solve, not just a math equation to balance.
All right, Section 3, handling objections naturally.
Now, handling objections without completely freezing up or getting defensive, that is where frameworks truly shine. I mean, we've all heard these, right? Just give me your best price, or the classic, oh, I'm just looking. Normally, these trigger salespeople to either panic and drop the price immediately or get super aggressive and confrontational to try and force the issue. But if you're operating from a framework, you know these statements aren't brick walls. They're just speed bumps.
So when those objections pop up, keep these core psychological goals in mind. Instead of fighting the customer, your framework should validate where they're coming from. Start by acknowledging their perspective with something simple like, hey, I completely understand wanting to get the best possible price. Avoid getting defensive at all costs. For the just-looking customer, validate their research. Agree with them that a test drive is literally the best research they can do, and then smoothly pivot to setting up an in-person appointment. Remember, your ultimate goal is always to sell the appointment, not the car over the phone.
And then there's trade-in values, always a massive friction point. If a customer questions a value and you just say, well, that's just market value, it sounds incredibly dismissive and combative. It basically tells the customer that all their research is wrong. Now compare that to a framework approach. Let's walk through how the numbers were calculated. When you're talking about trade-ins or final numbers, being collaborative and transparent works infinitely better than being defensive. It completely shifts the dynamic from you versus the customer to you and the customer tackling the problem together.
Moving on to Section 4, powering follow-ups with AI.
Okay, so we've talked about the theory, but let's dive into how we can actually scale this natural communication across your entire store using generative AI. And listen, you do not need to be a software engineer or a tech wizard to use this stuff. Generative AI is just a highly practical support tool. It's not here to replace your salespeople, it's here to instantly generate conversational word tracks for rapid, high-quality follow-ups. Tools like ChatGPT just respond to what you ask them, which makes them the perfect digital assistants to help your team beat writer's block, draft custom texts, and prep for tough calls without falling back on those tired old cliches.
And getting great results from AI is actually super straightforward with this simple 4-part formula. AI is really only as good as the prompt you feed it. So to get highly usable dealership language, first, clearly define the role. Say, you are a BDC manager at a franchise dealership. Second, give it the context. A customer submitted a lead this morning and hasn't replied. Third, give it the exact task. Write a follow-up text. And finally, define the output format. Keep it under 30 words with a conversational tone. Hit enter and just watch the magic happen.
Once you start using that exact 4-part prompt, the applications across your store are practically endless. A sales manager can instantly spin up a realistic negotiation role-play scenario for the morning training huddle. An F&I director can ask the AI to draft 3 completely plain language ways to explain gap insurance without using any of that heavy industry jargon. Or your BDC can draft a few different ways to handle payment shock when a customer is totally surprised by the monthly numbers. It is an absolute consistency multiplier for your entire team.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the mystery shop test.
Look, you can have the absolute best frameworks and the cleverest AI prompts in the world, but if your internal systems are fundamentally broken, none of it matters. Speed is everything. According to a really landmark MIT study, leads contacted within 5 minutes are 21 times more likely to be qualified than those contacted after 30 minutes. Let that sink in for a second. 21 times more likely. If your team is taking half an hour to respond to a basic web form, you are actively burning through your marketing dollars.
The harsh reality is that your CRM might look totally fine internally. A lead shows up, a task gets checked off, right? But the customer might be having a completely different experience. They could be hitting dead ends on your phone tree, sitting on endless hold times in your service department, or submitting web forms that just vanish into the digital ether. An internal report only tells you what the software logged. It doesn't tell you a single thing about what the customer actually felt.
So, if you want to truly fix those broken processes and stop losing leads, you need to spend just 5 minutes a week acting like a customer and mystery shopping your own entry points. Map out the path. Call every single phone number on your website and see exactly how long it takes to reach a human being. Submit a dummy credit app. Test out the chat feature on both mobile and desktop. And most importantly, evaluate not just the speed, but the tone of the response. Were you treated like a real person or processed like a support ticket?
I'll leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. If you submitted a web form to your dealership right now, this very second, how long would it take to get a truly human response? Are you absolutely certain your team sounds like helpful, empathetic humans using flexible frameworks? Or are you secretly trapping your customers in an automated, high-pressure maze? Challenge your team this week. Ditch the rigid scripts. Leverage these AI tools to sharpen up those word tracks and take that 5-minute mystery shop test. Find out what's really happening on the front lines.